All right, we are live. Day 503. Make sure everything's okay, good. Today, what we're doing is we're talking about how to build a list of comparable sales properties if you're looking to do the BRRRR strategy. Now, the BRRRR strategy stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. 5 steps. Now, the key part about the strategy, and let's use an example, right? So, let's say you buy a home for $20,000 and you spend $50,000 renovating that property. So that gives you a total investment of $70,000. But if you're going to make it worth $100,000, you just created from a $70,000 investment, this $30,000 of equity to get to your $100,000 value. Now you can go get a DSCR or debt service coverage ratio loan for 70% of the home's value pretty easily. And you can take that 70 grand back out in the form of loan proceeds. That's what makes the BRRRR strategy so scalable, because you get to get back the same pile of cash you invested and put that towards the next deal and do it over and over and over again. That's what makes it so interesting. So if that is your route that you want to take, I mean, what's that in comparison? Why is it better, right? Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is you saving money for a 20% down payment, and you hope that the first property that you buy cash flows or it appreciates, and you save up money again for the next 20% down payment and do it over and over again. And I'm not saying that you can't be successful doing that. You absolutely can be successful doing that. The problem is it's a little bit slower, and you just got to weigh your trade-offs, right? Like, what is the point of scaling faster, right? Are you after cash flow? You after appreciation? Because some people, they might not even care about appreciation. I mean, they might not even care about cash flow. They would say, hey, if I can break even on $1 million home and appreciate 5% every single year, well, now all of a sudden I'm making $50,000 a year in appreciation. That's how I build wealth. That's how I build equity, right? They might not care about $200 of cash flow a month. But in order to do that, you have to get your ARV, your after repair value, correct. So here's the thing. So what we've been doing, and you've been following us, is we've been looking at properties that have been coming on the market, and we note down all the typical attributes, right? Bed bath count, the square footage, the year built, the sold price, price per square foot, the sold date, lot size, something, and then a couple of things that are unique to your market. So this is interesting. I'm looking at the garage, when it's the basement, if there's an HOA, what subdivision is in, and just some general comments about the condition of the home based on visually looking at the property, from condition of the kitchen, bathrooms, the floor, the painting, and if you can notice anything else like water heaters, etc. Or just looking through the comments to see what they might indicate needs to be fixed. Okay. All right. So now, but sold. And then we start looking at properties that were sold in the last 3 months. And now, most recently, we're looking at properties that are coming onto the market now. So with this property, I've been looking at properties that are 4-bedroom plus, single family homes in the Birmingham, Alabama, and have been on the market for less than 7 days. And I came across this property, 135 Grand Center Point. And this is 1626 Ave Northwest in Center Point, Alabama, 35215. And you look at this property, I mean, there's some older rooms, so you could probably say that this needs to be a cosmetic rehab. Probably needs to update the carpet in this area for maybe that area. The kitchen looks okay. It looks above average. You don't really need to do much. Don't need to do much outside. So there's some more carpeting. So maybe you got to do LVP in like a third of the house. And then we would repaint the entire house. But I don't need to do anything with the kitchen. And where's the bathrooms? The bathrooms, I mean, they could use a little bit of love, but you could probably get by with it being rent ready just by putting in high pressure flush toilets. But I like this property because, one, if I ever look at another property and let's say it's a 3-2, 1,500 square feet, I can say, hey, how can I turn this into a 4-bedroom? And if I turn into a 4-bedroom, what's a dollar per square foot that I can get based on this comp that I'm seeing right in front of me? Right? Because this property doesn't look like the best, and it might look like rental grade. So if I renovate that property to look like this property, then I have higher degree of confidence that this property, if it sells for $70 per square foot, might be the ARV dollar per square foot that I have to think about for my property as my floor scenario. Because my goal is to renovate the home to look better than this property, obviously, but that does not necessarily guarantee a higher one. So $70 might be what I look for on this property. So I'm just going to write down that this property is 0.34 acres. This property was built in 1957. This property is listed for $135,000. And on a dollar per square foot, it's 135,000 divided by 1860, and that's it. So it's listed 213, 25. Is there a garage on this property? No garage. No garage, no basement, no HOA. And what division is this property in? This property is closest to Wood-Air Estates. Wood-Air Estates. Great. And now I'll say average kitchen. Fine to leave as is. Average bathrooms, not modern. Needs full paint job. And LVP for at least 1/3 of home. Great. So now I have these conditions of the property. I can go refer back to this property, right? Because for me right now, I'm saying, hey, this property is listed for $70 a square foot. Is there anything else in the vicinity? So this property, right, from January 16th was also in Wood-Air Estates. This property was listed for $116 a square foot. And let's see, this property was a 3.2, and it's still on the market. So 169,900. It's already dropped down about $6,000. It still hasn't sold. And I would argue that this is a nicer home, right? Look at the finishes. Look how much brighter it is. Look how much better it looks, right? But it still hasn't sold. So we got to pay close attention to what's going on. And again, the reason why we're looking at properties coming onto the market today is because we're paying close attention to what's happening with a 10-year yield. Okay. If you understand how the 30-year mortgage interest rates are affected by the 10-year yield, right? It's affected by two things primarily. One is the interest rate on the 10-year yield. And you can see over the last year, right? Right now it's 4.525, but it's gone up from as high as 4.8 to the low of like 3.6, back up to 4.8 just a couple weeks ago. So here's the problem, right? One, it's dependent on the interest rate, but also depends on the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Historically, that spread has been 1.5% to 2%, but we saw it as high as 3%. And that's when your interest rates got to 8%. And that nearly halted the entire housing market. One of the slowest housing market in terms of the number of transactions ever. So why does it matter for BRRRR? Now, if you are financing today, you might be looking at properties that were sold in September and October when interest rates were lowest. So when interest rates are down, your monthly payment is down. So that drives your affordability up, which means you can afford to pay a higher purchase price for your properties. Conversely, if you have high interest rates, you have higher payments, that drives down your affordability and that drives down the closing prices. So if you were refinancing today, you might be looking at comps that were sold in September and October when they were higher. But if you're buying a property today when interest rates are nearly at this 12-month highs, that's your risk. It's a higher risk because in 3 to 6 months from now, the properties that are sold today, as we just saw earlier in Wood-Air Estates, we saw a property that had to do a price drop and they still haven't sold, right? So that puts downward pressure on your prices. So you might think, hey, you know what? Instead of looking for 70% of the ARV, I might be looking for 60%. So I can build an extra 10% buffer because I can see right now my 10-year yield isn't at its yearly high. That should give you a little bit of hesitation about using a comp 3 months from now or 3 months ago because interest rates were a lot lower. Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. Please DM me anytime you guys have any questions. I'm happy to just talk it through. Okay. So now that I have this number in here, I can always refer back to it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze this deal for you, assuming just on the market details. $135,000. We talked about renovations. Let's go to the rehab calculator. I always set aside in row 6, $1,500 for roof repair, just in case anything I can't see. I've set aside $5 for the landscaping. I got $549 for painting. No, let's change that to the entire square footage of the house, which was 1860. Okay. 1860. And then I got a third of the home that needs to be added to LVP. So that's $8 a square foot. It's about $5,000. I got 2 toilets. I want to change the high pressure flush toilets for both of the bathrooms so I don't have any clogged toilet calls. And that gives me total rehab about $16,000, roughly. Great. So now $16,000, what am I going to get for rent? So if I go to affordablehousing.com and I go to the owner section and I go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in bedroom count, I can see that the average rent for a 4-bedroom in this area is $1,469. So let's do $1,450 to be a little bit more conservative. I'm going to get my expenses right here from the payment calculator. And I can see that right now, I can see taxes is $60. You should definitely double check with your county assessor records before you close, because 60 seems a little light. Then I see that it says 105 for the homeowner insurance right here. And I'll multiply that by 1.2. I'm multiplying by 1.2 because I can see that insurance companies view investment assets as a higher risk asset. I'm assuming this 105 is for a primary residence property. So I'm going to assume this is for an investment. So I'm adding a 20% premium by multiplying it by 1.2 and B29. Then I got 10% on my rent set aside for maintenance, right? I understand that the roof is going to replace in 10, 15 years. Doesn't matter if it's new or 20, 25 years. I know that my HVAC is going to get replaced in 10, 15, 20 years. Saving for my water heater. If I don't set aside money right now for those future repairs down the road, I would be underestimating my expenses and overestimating my profitability. That's a problem. Okay. And then for 10% on my property management, and I got 5% for vacancy. So don't be that person, right? The maintenance is the most important one. There's a reason I emphasized it. If you don't set aside the money, you'd be lying to yourself. Please, please don't be that person. And don't trust any gurus out there that says, hey, it's turnkey. There's no maintenance. It's really irresponsible. Don't listen to people that ever says that. Okay. Now, for my down payment, in F19, I got 25% down. So in E19, my down payment is going to equals to my B4 times, which is my asking price, times my down payment percentage in F19. So I'll be putting in $33,750. I'm going to zero this assignment fee because that was for yesterday's deal. Got 2% for closing costs, and my renovation $16,000. Great. So my financing amount in K6 is going to equals to my B4, my listing price, minus my down payment in E19 that I calculate earlier. So it'll be $101,000 with a 7.5% interest rate right now. Let's zero out this principal. This property, if I buy it right now, assuming everything else is correct, right? I didn't mess up the estimates. I can, if I rent this out for $1,450, cash flow $193 a month, and that's a 4.4% cash and cash return with a $135,000 purchase with a $16,000 rehab. 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. So I'm going to break that scenario down. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call, but just simply showing you all how to tactically put in the numbers on this deal to figure out what is it going to take for this to be a deal for you. All right, let's say my target return in E9, my cash and cash return, my return on my invested cash is supposed to be 10%. What do I need to buy this property for me to reach that? If I lower my asking price to 110, $100,000, great, 105, 103. If I can buy this property for $103,000, now I can be at 9.9% cash and cash return, 103. Does that mean you can get the property for 103 when it's listed for 135? Maybe, maybe not. But at least now you know what is it going to take for this to be a deal. So you might submit a deal for 103, right? That's completely your choice. But again, assuming the same things, 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. Now, if I went and said, hey, what if my interest rates, now we just talked about interest rates, right? Watch what happens in 10-year. If it fluctuates based on the Trump administration trying to say they're focusing on 10-year yield, right? Don't listen to Federal Reserve. Don't listen to the doom, gloom stuff. Just follow what they're doing. because the 10-year yield might be following headlines. They might be following the jobs data, the economics data, and the bond market is way, way faster than the Fed sometimes. So if your interest rates come down to 6%, look what happened to your cash and cash return number. It went up by 2%. So now you might say, hey, I can pay 113 grand and still achieve the target return of 10.1, assuming everything else stays constant with a $16,000 rehab, but a 6% interest rate. Again, $1,450 in rent because then I'm cash on $393. Now I'm gonna do one more scenario. What if my rehab tripled, right? I figure I need to redo the electric. I need to redo some plumbing because it's such an old home. And now it costs me $48,000. Okay, look what happened to my cash and cash return number. It just went down to 6. So now I might have to be at 80 grand. So if you got a inspection contingency, you might now say, hey, I got to back out of this deal, Mrs. or Mrs. Seller, because I realized after opening up the walls, my rehab tripled to 48 grand. So I can no longer afford to give you 113 from the prior scenario, not the 135 that's listed for. But now I can only pay you 75 grand because my rehab tripled. And that's how you take the emotions out of the process and understand how do you objectively stay aligned to your goals and just don't get mad about it, right? Just spend the time, plug in the number related to your target return and see what happens. What's it going to take to make this a deal, quote unquote, for you? And all those factors matter, right? Hopefully this was helpful, everybody. My goal is for you to copy my homework today. Look at the same data analysis today, right? This probably just came on the market 11 hours ago, so I'm not making this up. And I hope you go to affordablehousing.io and get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I modified it, tweaked it so that I can analyze deals as fast as possible. And you go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, plug your name and your phone number. You can get that right away. That's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. And my hope is that you copy my homework. Please just put it on your own YouTube channel. Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can say, hey, I know that this is a deal because I've been looking at properties for the past 503 days. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. In case you guys want to see a podcast about the Birmingham market, definitely check out the podcast I did with Daisy Sebastian. She talked through all the different markets that we covered today, including Center Point, right? Center Point is a little bit further out from Birmingham, but it's a quieter area where a lot of families like because it's close to some shopping, right? So I hope you all have an amazing Thursday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today because that's what life is all about. I can't thank you enough for caring about affordable housing. I can't thank you enough for being part of the community. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Without folks like you, I would have given up 2.5 years ago. Without folks like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 504. Have a good one, everybody.